Hi, everyone. Welcome to this AI Monetization Podcast from ProjectPro. I'm Binny, the co-founder of ProjectPro. We speak with industry, AI, and data science leaders to understand what kind of business outcomes they're seeing with AI. Today, we are thrilled to have Faizan Javed, AI and data science expert focused on healthcare. Faizan is actually the senior director and chief data science officer at Kaiser Permanente, which manages over 40 hospitals, over 700 medical offices, and has over 98,000 physicians and nurses. Faizan is also an adjunct faculty at the Southern Methodist University, and before that, he was a senior data science leader focused on search science at the Home Depot. Faizan also chairs and co-chairs of many workshops, symposiums, and conferences focused on research across NLP, search, and recommendation systems. Faizan, thanks for doing this. Welcome to this show.
Thank you, Binny. Thanks for the intro. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So Faizan, you've been doing, you started off as a developer and you've been doing data science, machine learning, and now AI for some time right now. What has the last 24 months been like since we got into
Uh,
this Gen AI?
yeah, yeah. In the space of data science, AI, machine learning, I think the last 24 months have been really exciting, and there's a whole lot of potential that's appearing now. Even though
Mm,
like we've had a lot of progress in the space over the past 15 years, I would say,
yeah.
but the last 2 years, especially with the advent of the advances in natural language processing,
Yeah.
that has actually powered through a whole host of potential use cases and
Mm,
applications and possibilities across industries. So that's the thing that's to me very exciting to see that just beyond the core R&D faction, we have these whole outsiders, so to speak, across the industries, whether it's the board members of companies or industries where AI still hasn't made a breakthrough. Now they're
mm,
coming on board and seeing they want to learn, they want to know what's happening, they want to know what are the possibilities. So I think that it's a very exciting time.
yeah. And Faizan, I know you have a PhD on the topic. You've been a professor and you've been a practitioner, and you've been exposed to a lot of research in this space with all the workshops and the symposiums you run, right? Over the last 6, 7 years, did you see a steady upcreep in the amount of research towards what happened now? There was the attention is all you need paper.
Mhm.
And did you see a steady uptick in research, or was this whole thing just sudden? Out of nowhere, it just showed up.
No, like this thing has been actually building up over time, right? So
Hmm.
we've seen that over the past 10, 15 years, they have been advancing, there have been some advances at the infrastructure level, the cloud computing infrastructure that has accelerated a lot of these capabilities. At the
Hmm.
same time, on the AI side, in terms of
Hmm.
models, there has been a lot of progress being made by the big tech companies like Google in terms of, as you mentioned, right? The attention is all you need, transformer-based the paper that was the foundation of the transformer model that actually jump started this innovation, this progress in the NLP space. So we have went through the cycle where AI has been there for a while. We all know for the past 15 years, 50 years actually, AI is nothing new, but the advances in cloud computing infrastructure and then corresponding progress made via AI models, whether it be pure AI or deep learning or natural language processing based approaches. We have seen that arc accelerate through
Yeah.
both sides of the equation, right? Infrastructure,
Hmm.
cloud, and also the modeling side. So these
Yeah.
two are going hand in hand and making that progress.
Hmm.
And we've seen that just before this large language model space, we saw that breakthrough 10 years ago with the embedding space, right?
Hmm.
Word to vec, BERT. So it's not a surprise. It will look like a surprise to the people who are not in the AI community,
Hmm.
because certainly you have these language models that can do these amazing things, conversations and so forth, right? But
Hmm.
for the insiders, so to speak, this has been coming.
Got it. And you mentioned the interplay between the infrastructure and the algorithms
Mm.
evolving, right? So, do you think this? a lot of what we see with, I guess, GPT 3.4, 3.5 and 4, which is kind of where the hype all took off.
Mm.
Do you think a significant part of that performance that we have seen is because of this bold vision to invest a ton of money behind infrastructure? Do you think that had a huge role to play in it, or?
Yeah, I think so. So that is also a key point because we are seeing right now how big of a player NVIDIA has become, right?
Mm,
So NVIDIA is now actually one of the top AI players. Their GPUs are in demand. So being
yeah.
able to so GPU computing now of course we have also seen many tech companies building their own GPUs. We've seen the same thing from Apple and Google as well, right?
Yeah.
They're building these TPUs as well,
Mm,
TPUs and CGPUs. So yeah, so there is a correlation there where this has been fueled by this big boost in infrastructure and cloud computing technologies, which have also enabled these large language models to come to fruition. Right now, we
mm,
can process things, even though the scale has changed, because
mm,
what we thought was very computationally expensive, like the deep learning models
mm,
10 years ago, those are actually the I would say that the Overton window has shifted, right? We've moved from deep learning to large language models, and the fact that, as you were saying, uh, being willing to invest in that space, both from an infrastructure side of the house and also from the modeling side, has
mm.
been a key contributor to these advances.
Yeah. Okay. And you spent a lot of your time in your career focused on search and recommendation engines and such. Um, what do you think has fundamentally changed in the paradigm of search um, before and after GenAI? Both kind of web search and also
Mhm.
internal enterprise search. What do you think is going on there?
Well, first of all, I would like to mention that like how critical I think search is in terms of
Mm,
driving these innovations, right?
mm,
So if you see the previous 15, 20 years, I think industry has taken over. So many of the innovations in this space are coming from industry. So you see
mm,
things have shifted. 30 years ago, it used to be academia and industry, but now many of the
mm,
innovations are coming from industry. And yes, I'm a big fan of search, but I also have justification for that because search is a very interesting problem, right? It's at scale, right? You have to actually build machine learning systems, AI systems, which have to respond within milliseconds. So you have this engineering challenge, and you also have the AI challenge. So I actually view search as a really, really important use case for language models and GenAI right now at this point in time. And
mm.
search is also something as a use case which is very prevalent. Everyone knows search, so I don't
Yeah.
need to explain someone, hey, here's this obscure AI use case, because people use it all the time, right?
Mm,
On the mobile phones, apps. So yes, so I think so search has actually evolved where in this sense where we have reached a point where both from the infrastructure side and AI side, now we are seeing the transformation of search where now we are seeing, as you can see currently on Google and other search vendors, right?
mhm.
We have reached a stage where we are now dealing with like conversations and summaries, right?
Yeah.
So we have gone from just seeing links to seeing a summarized view where the AI powered engines are actually giving you or spoon feeding you the answers, right? They're
Right.
spoon feeding you a summary of an answer. Now, of course, we have some issues where the answers may be accurate or not. So
Yeah.
that's the thing, but that's the transformation we've seen in search,
Mhm.
and search is a big driver of innovation in this space because of these reasons.
And has search fundamentally changed the methodology of search when Gen AI and a knowledge graph is involved and things like that? Or?
Yeah, so I think so in terms of the so if I just zoom out, right? So
Mm,
search back in the day used to be keyword based. Okay, you're typing in a query, like if I type in, okay, where is Google headquartered, right?
mm,
So it used to be keyword based search. Go and find these words in your index of documents, right? From that, it has evolved to a semantic search. So there was a
mm,
phase where uh, knowledge graphs, which actually are basically they actually encode entities and relations, right? You have an entity like, let's say, a ProjectPro, and you
mm,
may have a relation like, okay, ProjectPro is headquartered in this XYZ city.
mm.
So that was the next phase of evolution. And then from there, it went on to semantic search using word embeddings, right? Basically, are we able to find similar things if I'm looking for AI engineers, right? Well, AI engineers may also be known as machine learning engineers.
Yeah.
So search should be intelligent to be able to understand that, assume that, right? Not just do an AI engineer search. So that was the innovation with semantic search techniques using vector embeddings and so forth. So from that, we have gone on to a space where if anyone has experience with search from the past 20 years, you may recall that search engines like Google's and Yahoo's used to provide guides on how to transform your query, right? So they used to shift the cognitive load onto the user. Hey, user, here's a guide how you can tune your query. Add this modifier, add that modifier. So that to me was always a negative. But of course, back in the day, we didn't have the technology. But now I think the assumption is the search engine should be able to understand the query. If I'm asking for a question, if I'm asking, okay, build me what's the most cheapest flight to Paris, right? The search engine should be able to understand it. I should not have to mess with the query side of the house, right? Go and find me the answer. Right. So now what we're seeing is that the search engines, they're able to handle these what we call complex tasks. So a query can be very easy, a simple task like, okay, like what's the date today? It can also be a very complex task like, okay, create me a tour of Paris. That's a complex query. So that's where the GenAI powered solutions come into play, because those complex queries are hard to give an answer for, right? So that's where we are seeing the innovation where search has transformed from keyword-based simple queries to be able to understand what the user is saying and handle both simple and complex queries, right?
Right. That makes sense. I think that whole journey from the early days to now is very insightful. What do you make out of the recent launch of ChatGPT search?
So I think I would say that like a ChatGPT search, I would say both ChatGPT search and these other recent innovations like AI overviews from Google and Bing Chat are actually going down the same path, right? So they're actually trying to, search is being transformed into more of an answer engine. I want to give you answers, but we still have to know that there's a fine line between chat and search, right? So they are merging, as we're seeing with ChatGPT search, but the fact is that for search, sometimes you're not always in a mode of conversation. Sometimes I want to know the answer for short questions, right? Fact-based questions. If I have a fact-based question like, okay, what's the revenue of Meta this last quarter? It's a fact. I don't want to engage in a back and forth conversation, right? Yeah. So that's a tension. So right now the space is in a very interesting phase where how do we draw the lines between search and chat? And that's what we're seeing with ChatGPT search as well. Okay, you know, and also AI overviews by Google, right? Okay, if you want to get fast real-time answers to your questions, you know, if you are trying to find the latest score of the latest India and Pakistan match that's happening in real time. Yeah. Well, that will have to be answered via a search-based ecosystem, like we've seen, where you actually combine language models with RAG-based backend, right? A search-based backend, the retrieval augmented generation-based app. So there's that tension being played out right now, where yes, how do we come up with a system, an answer engine that can give you answers to static questions? Questions that don't change versus real-time answers where you're asking questions where the answer may change over time, right? So that's the reason why you're seeing ChatGPT search from OpenAI, because they do see some value in that space. So.
Yeah, right. Okay. And, you know, recently there was this article by the Anthropic CEO, Dario Amodei, where he basically said the most significant impact of AI is going to be in healthcare. I think he listed down 5 industries, and the first one is healthcare. And he, you know, said something to the extent that the next 100 or 150 years of healthcare progress is going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. What are your thoughts on that? And where do you think we are going to see most of this progress happen in healthcare, given your deep experience in that industry?
Well, so I want to say that AI is not new in healthcare, right? AI has been in healthcare for a while, but healthcare as an industry has some unique challenges where there is the issue of patient privacy, right? There's the issue of basically do no harm, and there's also the issue of like making sure that what you're proposing, especially when you have physicians, are tools that augment their capabilities, not replace them. So the goal is not to replace physicians. The goal is what we call augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence in this case. So that's the space, and of course, there is a lot of opportunity in healthcare, and since COVID, things have accelerated in terms of faster adoption of AI-based tools, right? And that's because what happened was that healthcare was always lagging in the space of digital healthcare, right? So we all have seen these examples of healthcare just using fax machines, right? People say, "Oh, this is an industry that's big, but it's also old. They're using outdated technology. Fax machines are still there." Yes, fax machines are still there, but now the healthcare industry has started shifting post-COVID, especially because COVID was when people were not able to go to hospitals. So they said, "Hey, okay, I want to use these digital tools." That's when they found that most of the healthcare industry was lagging, and that actually created a big infusion of innovation of digital tools in healthcare, bringing in AI as well, right? Now with this Gen AI revolution, yes, there is, as you were quoting the CEO of Perplexity, right? Yes, there's a lot of innovation possibilities there, and it will have to be driven by the innovation on the digital side, on the consumer side, on the patient side, because the closer you get to the physicians, the higher the risk, right, in terms of doing harm, right? Because we can't just say, okay, here's a treatment plan recommendation from a chatbot, go and apply it,
right?
Because who knows, it may be hallucinating or not. So you don't want to do that. This is why. So I think so. We have these two facets: the patient side and the physician side. And on the patient side, you can apply these tools like chatbots and search and AI-based tools to help them provide information and make appointments. On the side of the physicians, you can have these tools to help physicians with their administrative tasks, right? So they use health records. Can you apply search and AI techniques to help them get the most relevant information, summarize information, to help them make decisions while they're treating and analyzing patients. So both sides of the equation have a lot of possibilities, a ton of use cases. And I haven't even mentioned use cases that go into life sciences and drug discovery. Drug discovery is another big space, finding new vaccines, treatment plans. There's a lot of data there, and I think Gen AI and AI techniques can accelerate that even further. As a whole spectrum of use cases, a lot of potential, but we have to proceed carefully.
Yeah. Okay. You made an interesting point about despite the multiple waves of technologies over the last couple of decades, the scenario of still using fax machines. And you said the two primary concerns in healthcare is obviously patient confidentiality, and also you're not going to replace the HCP, the medical doctor. So this time around with Gen AI, why do you think the impact is going to be so much more than the previous technology waves? Is it because this technology now is so significantly better that people are going to be comfortable looking past those concerns? Or why do you think they'll get comfort over adopting this a lot faster than they did the previous ones?
Yeah, so I think the concerns are still there, right? So we still have to make sure that the healthcare data, the patient privacy and security, and also making sure that we don't build systems that show bias, responsible AI, right? Like, for example, so those concerns are still there, right? So those will not go away. But now we have tools that can enable these use cases. And there's also more willingness to adopt. As I mentioned, a key inflection point was COVID. Right? Before COVID, so I actually viewed this before COVID, post-COVID, where the healthcare industry and the use cases and the people who are going to use them, either patients or the physicians, they didn't realize that now it's time to jump onto this digital technology, roadmap or bandwagon, so to speak. And at the same time, we have seen this innovation happening, this turbocharging of AI-based technologies, right? So those two things do play a key role, where there has always been some initial hesitation in adopting automation or AI tools in the healthcare industry. Now that is being broken. Those barriers are coming down a bit, because healthcare has to accelerate, and that's where we are seeing these now. The challenges, as you mentioned, right? Yes, we do have a ton of use cases. which use cases do we target? Which ones are easier to jump into in the healthcare spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which ones will we still face some resistance because of just the general nature of healthcare? So as I was saying, the closer you get to the physicians,
Yeah.
the slower the use cases will go because of the fact that you're getting closer to the actual treatment plans and recommendations, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And that spectrum you drew from, the spectrum of use cases from the easy to adopt to more difficult, right?
Mm.
Is there a killer use case that comes to mind in healthcare, like a prime use case as an intersection of a large opportunity, low hanging fruit, easy to adopt, that will be like the beachhead to expand in healthcare?
Yes, and
Mhm,
I think, from my perspective, it's always to start with the most commonly known use case that people use
mhm,
all the time,
mhm,
and that's the same case in healthcare as in
mhm,
everywhere else. If I want to say that, okay, which use case, especially when when you talk about Gen AI and AI, right? I would say start with search and recommendations, right? Because these are applied everywhere, including healthcare, right?
mhm,
These are the most easily understood use cases. When you have business stakeholders, they will understand
mhm,
it more easily as well. And there's
mhm,
also opportunity in healthcare on both sides of the house, whether it's the patient
mhm.
use case for search or whether it's the use case for the physician. So as a patient or a consumer like you and me,
Yeah.
yes, we have a great use case that's okay, I want to find information about my own doctor, finding
Mhm.
doctors and locations. I want to find information
Ah,
on some healthcare articles or some
mhm,
on some conditions, on
mhm,
some drugs and diseases, right?
mhm,
So this is a very easy use case from a digital channel that can be powered without much risk. Now, of
mhm,
course, you can take it one step further and say, okay, well, uh, what if you build a search and chat system that also responds back to you with some recommendations? Yes.
mhm,
If I ask, okay, how do I treat COVID? And if the system
mhm,
says, okay, go and drink bleach. Yeah, well, that's a very that can, so there are some areas, some edges where it can be dangerous. But
mhm.
in terms of the information seeking for doctors, facilities, healthcare articles, diseases, drugs. That's a very common and powerful use case to apply AI in healthcare. Now, on
Mhm.
the side of the physicians, so as I said, we have two sides, right?
Yeah.
Now, for the physicians, when they're the user, a top use case for them is what's becoming really popular in the industry right now is
Mhm.
the use case of AI scribes.
Mm.
AI scribes are tools using AI and search techniques
Mhm.
which help the physicians with their administrative tasks.
Mhm.
So these are like, automated note-taking tools, right?
Yeah.
They help the physicians with, with this industry problem of pajama time. You know,
Mhm.
when you have a physician, they have their main job of treating patients, but at the same
Yeah.
time, then they have this so many extra things to take care of in terms of what we call the administrative burden.
Yeah.
That's the work they do after their time with the patients.
Yeah.
So AI scribes are becoming really popular on that side of the house, and these are
Mhm.
tools that help you automate note taking and then
Mhm.
also making recommendations based, like notes can be summarized and then you can
Yeah.
make recommendations using AI. So you
Mhm.
see, these are the use cases that I think can be what we call beachhead segments to
Mm.
drive AI further into healthcare.
Very interesting. And just to understand AI scribe slightly better, is this a scenario where the doctor is with the patient, they're having a conversation that is being recorded and being transcribed into bullet point summaries into some kind of a
Yes,
format?
exactly.
I
Yes.
see.
And then we can also go beyond that because like a
Mhm.
summarization is a big use case for GenAI, right?
Yeah.
GenAI is like text summarization is a massive use case.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, doctors are talking to the patients, and this is with
Yeah.
consent, right? So we have to
Right.
have the consent with the patient, like so. It only starts when you get the consent.
Mhm.
So automated note taking, summarization, and then beyond that, you can also augment this by saying, okay, based on these notes, what
Mhm.
should be my next step? Is it a treatment plan or a follow-up visit and so forth? And this
Mm.
actually, and once this is automated, yeah,
Mhm.
that takes a huge burden of extra work off the physician. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I can see how I mean, because that's a use case that every single doctor can benefit from. And
Hmm.
it is also a use case where there's a human in the loop, but the doctor is going to review what
Exactly.
if somebody comes in. So there's no drastic errors that's going to happen there.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So, one thing I'm curious about is to implement, let's say, this use case, right? Do you see companies just taking a foundation model from OpenAI or a Llama or a Gemini and just maybe prompt tuning it and it'll be ready for something like AI transcription? Or do you think there's going to be a verticalized healthcare medical LLM that is actually more suited to a task like this?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very interesting question because right now, based on the latest research, I don't think there's a clear winner because I've seen studies from both sides, from both Microsoft, Google, and other companies where the claim is that you have these general purpose language models like GPT-4, for example, right? Or a Gemini 2.0 with a million token context, which is massive. And there are some studies saying that, okay, well, if you prompt them properly, they can work for your domain, whether it's healthcare or finance. So there's a lot of work there. On the flip side, there's also a lot of work on what we call domain-specific models, which are actually smaller than these general-purpose language models, but they're actually tuned and trained on data, which is very specific for that domain. So there are also studies claiming that, yes, these domain-specific models do better than general-purpose language models on specific industry domains, right? So right now, I think there is no clear winner, but my prediction is that these domain-specific models, they will actually be much better for these specific domains because, first of all, for certain unique tasks, they will do better because the trend is there. They'll also be smaller and more efficient, right? That's a very key point because as we have seen right now, it's very expensive to train language models. It's very expensive to create inference from language models. Cost is a big factor. So I think these domain-specific models, by the fact that they are more focused, they are cheaper, and the fact that they can be used in the AI agent framework, which is expanding now, I think they will win out.
Got it. That makes sense. And in the scenario of these, either small language models or vertical models that you're referring to, and somewhere ought to fine tune them, right? Do we have a sense of what kind of training data is needed to fine tune them? Is it 100 instances, 500 instances, 10,000 instances to fine tune something to be good enough? Do we have a sense of that, the order of magnitude of the training data?
Yeah. So in this case, there's actually a mix of both, right? Just having more data isn't enough. I can have like 5 billion instances, and they can all be garbage, right? They can all be like small like modifications of the same instance. So it's really important to have the right data and also have enough of it, right? Now, of course, it depends on the use case, what is enough, right? For example, if you take an e-commerce example where you have, let's say, the Amazon taxonomy of a vast taxonomy of let's say 10,000 items or top nodes, right? Or 10,000 categories or more, right? So you would assume that yes, in that case you would need a lot of data to cover the whole umbrella, right? So just by the nature of the fact that Amazon has over 50,000 categories, you can assume that that's going to require a lot more data than a use case in healthcare where you're doing like a breast cancer classification. Well, it's not that easy to obtain a data set for breast cancer diagnosis because it's limited by the number of people you have in the world, right? So there's a scale difference there, but at the same time there is always a need for more data all the time, and this is where a new space, well, not a new space, a space that's becoming more prominent is how to create synthetic data, right? How can we create artificial data to help us overcome this bottleneck? So that's a space where a lot of work is now going on. How do we create proper like artificial data that can help us accelerate this?
Got it. Okay, makes sense. And I think a few weeks back you had shared a post and you had written some thoughts on the emerging role of a chief AI officer. Where do you think this person kind of fits in to the company? Because you have a CDO, there's a chief data officer, there's a chief data science officer. So where does a CAIO kind of fit in and the skill sets needed for someone like that?
Yeah. So this is a space that has been going under a lot of change, right? So we used to have these titles of a chief data officer, a person who was responsible for making sure that you have the data ecosystem, like across an organization, properly organized and staffed up properly. At the same time, this person was also responsible for the AI applications. So in my opinion, I think these two roles, they should actually be the same person or the same organization, because you have to know, like, a key issue was always that, okay, you're hiring this AI person. Okay, well, what are the responsibilities? Why are they there? And the issue was also, why are we seeing a big turnover in this space, right? Why are people leaving these jobs? And that was because there was no impact, there was no outcome. And the big issue was always, okay, if you have a company or a business hiring this person, they have to deliver some value, and it has to be tied to the things that the company cares about. What's the business value? Are there any use cases or customer problems that you can solve with AI, right?
Yeah.
So if this person in this role can't actually explain that, can't define, okay, what problems are we going to solve? What business objectives are we going to achieve? That's a big issue. That goes beyond AI or data, right? Because why is this person here? Why are you here? How are you going to contribute to the business? That's the question number one. From there, we can actually work backwards. Okay. Once we understand, so this person, whether it's chief AI officer or the chief data officer, they have to start with the business objectives and the metrics, right? And so working backwards from there, start to analyze, okay, what's the state of the data ecosystem in the company? Are we in stage one? By stage one, meaning that, like, do we have to build everything from scratch? Do we have the proper data engineering foundation? Do we have the tools and infrastructure? Do we have the data quality ecosystem? If you don't, I mean, there's no point going after large language models. We are in stage one. We have to build the platform, right? We have to build the foundation. And then the person would also have to analyze, okay, is there enough data literacy in the company? Do people understand what's possible, the art of the possible, right? So there's this phase. So I view this as step one, making sure that understanding what stage the company is in. Or it could be that the company is very mature, right? We have the examples of big tech, right? If you go to Google, Google is already there for you. They have the infrastructure set up. They have the ecosystem. They have the data literacy. So you can start jumping on the use cases from day one. But not every company is at phase. So you have to understand, okay, where is the company, which state of the data literacy or maturity the company is at. And then, but one thing, as I said, it's always going to be about business value, impact. If this person in this role can't show that, I think it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, that's very well said. The other thing I was curious about was when you put together business use cases inside an enterprise, is the priority just almost always dictated by kind of a dollar value? Is that kind of how it's really prioritized, or are other factors that go into it when you make that decision?
Well, it depends on the industries. Like, for example, in e-commerce, I saw e-commerce and retail, I think dollar value or gross demand was a big metric, right? Because it's about shifting units. It's about driving value via dollars, right? Because, it's retail. I mean, you have to sell stuff, right? But in other industries like healthcare, you have other metrics, right? There's other metrics in terms of like patient experience and so forth. So the metrics can change. Yes, there is some dollar impact. There is some dollar value there always, but across the industries, it can appear differently, right? So yes, so there's some industry-specific metrics which may not just be direct dollars, but of course, in the end, any company or corporation has to have a revenue income statement, right? So somehow it still comes in, but for many of the use cases and impact, you may have some other metrics alongside just pure dollar value.
Got it. One of the things you mentioned a few minutes back, Faizan, is that you talked about building a data foundation and a platform, right? That almost sounds as if all the data in the company has to come into some kind of lake house or some data warehouse for AI to see it. Is that the case? Or to solve one use case, can I just take a sliver of data I need in the company, organize that and run with my use case? Or do I need an entire foundation first to plug in use cases on top of that?
Yeah, so I think this has to be a very informed decision, right? So the reason I was saying is that we have to have a solid data ecosystem, both in terms of foundation, and storage, and quality, is because that's what we feed into the use cases, and the use cases are driven by AI.
Yeah.
So now I've seen many cases where across industries where people are like, okay, I want to spend all my time, and by all my time I mean like 2-3 years just building the data ecosystem. I think yeah, so that is not really that fruitful, because we have to move fast, because we are building this data ecosystem and making an informed choice of what kind of data needs to be there, right?
Yeah.
Once again, going back to the ROI, that's the end goal. Why
Right.
are we doing this? So I cannot say that I'm going to spend 5 years building this data ecosystem and put all kinds of data in this stuff and build this cloud ecosystem and so forth, because it's a very deep stack issue, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an end to some means, and the means are, okay, what business value, what ROI are you going to deliver with this? So that's where, going back to your point, yes, we have to make informed choices, not blow the budget on something that's not useful, and create that ecosystem of data with data quality, data governance, and so forth, to ensure that we are able to tie that investment to some actual use cases that are going to deliver value. This is so important in industry, because eventually the bill does come due, right? Because the question you may get from your SVP or CEO might be, okay, great, you build this stuff, so what?
Right.
I mean, how do we answer the question, so what? Okay, I built all this stuff, for what? It's just going to stay there? No. So we have to tie that, okay, I built this data lake or data warehouse, and guess what? This is being used for this XYZ use case, and that use case is tied to this roadmap in your top-level business objective. So that's the point that most of us in technology, they miss, because we get so excited about technology. Oh, I'm going to keep building this data ecosystem over and over and over. And before you know it, it's too late.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, you can knock yourself out with, data mesh and like everything, like, so. Yeah.
But can we answer the question, so what? I mean, you build this, so what? I mean, like, what's the payoff? What's the ROI? What's the use case?
Yeah, makes sense. As a data science and AI leader, what would you say are your top 2 burning problems that bother you, that you need solved ASAP?
Yeah, so I would say, like, at this point in time, if you had asked me this question, 10-15 years ago, I would give you a technical answer. Oh, I'm struggling with this. I don't have the proper infrastructure or cloud system, and I can't run the AI models, and we're just stuck. But that has gone away, right? Thanks to the advances, as we just discussed early on. Now, I think I would say the question is, okay, the top 2 problems are, how do I deliver value with AI? Right? So, because if I'm operating in this space, how can I make sure that my business, whether it's my own business, whether it's my own startup, or whether it's a company, how can I leverage AI to solve customer problems? Or the right way is to understand what are the customer problems in my space, and can I solve them with AI? So to understand, so this is once again working backwards from the customers, right? It's possible that, like, you are in an industry where you may not have that much opportunity. Okay, that's fine, because we don't want to use AI as a hammer and force it into somewhere where it doesn't belong. So it's all about trying to understand, okay, in the space that I am in, or in the company I'm at, what do I have a good understanding of the customer problems, and can data science or AI solve them, right? That takes a lot of time and effort, and that's also a big problem. The second big issue is not an issue, I would say a challenge, is talent, right? Finding the right talent, because once again, being able to deliver something that satisfies customer needs, it requires people to come together and build stuff, right? And talent is, as I said, we are fortunate that in the AI space that we are still in demand. As you know, the state of the tech industry is still up and down, but the AI space is still now the talent is that not everyone can hire all the best AI engineers, right, or AI scientists.
Right.
They are much in demand. Big tech is going to grab most of them. So how do we deal with the problem of talent? And this is where, as I said, it's possible to actually, we can form partnerships with academia, right? Like form partnerships with some of the leading research universities, have comprehensive internship programs, also make sure that you're able to upskill your employees internally, right? So, we can create boot camps internally to make sure that we are able to build in-house talent as well. So if you have a software engineer, that person can become an AI engineer or data scientist with some training.
Yeah.
right? So can we build those in-house boot camps to upskill internal employees? Of course, it's going to be very hard if you have an accountant and that person wants to be a data scientist. That's a much bigger hill to jump over, but we can actually do this cross-training, build in-house talent, of course, hire the best we can, and then of course form partnerships with academia and universities.
Right.
So I think that's where AI use cases, business value, how do you drive AI innovation, and then how do we deal with the problem of talent?
Got it. So yeah, that's very helpful. So very crisp. One is how do you understand and identify those customer pain points to solve with AI, and how do you find the right people who will solve it? On the first point, I assume that's been a priority or a problem even 5 years back or 8 years back, making sure you understand the customer problem and how do you use the technology to solve it, right? That's been a challenge always. Is the solution to that a technology solution or is it a process solution? What form does a solution to that look like for you to satisfactorily solve that?
No, so in this case, like the issue that I'm highlighting is that, like what I'm seeing right now, even in many discussions and articles, is that people are actually saying that, okay, well, people or boards across companies are saying, okay, well, there's this fear of being left out, right? Okay, well, if everyone else is doing AI, I should do AI too, right? So that has actually reached peak high right now, where people or companies don't want to be left out. So I think this is yes, just you are right. The issue of trying to find the right customer problem has always been there, but now I think I'm seeing that this is a bit negative in the sense that just because if you don't have a need or if you don't have a proper use case, people are trying to jump over themselves and trying to apply AI. It may not be useful, right? And then I think then the issue, then what happens in this case is that if you fail with something that you haven't validated as a proper use case, then it actually harms the AI community because they may say, okay, well, we tried AI, it doesn't work now. It never worked. So the approach, so going back to your point, which is a great point, yes, the approach has slightly shifted because of the hype factor. So we have to go back to the basics. We're saying that, okay, let's find the customer problems we have right now. And of course, there are many ways to find the customer issues and problems, right? You have customers you talk to, you get feedback loops, you have industry analysis, all of those things are still there. But we just have to avoid this fear of being left out, and still focus on the customers. Now, this time we are much better armed. Yes, now we have the tool set that's very, very strong, very advanced, which wasn't the case 20 years ago. Now we are much better equipped on this side. And once again, let's apply the best practices of understanding the customer pain point. And this time we are coming in much better prepared.
Very nice. And on the second problem that you discussed about talent and upskilling, right? In the previous technology waves of, let's say, mobile or cloud and things like that, we all relied on Pluralsight, Coursera, Udemy, some combination of these to upskill teams and some self-learning and all that. Is that similar? What's going to happen now when you're talking about upskilling software developers into AI, or is there a different way that's more appropriate for this wave?
Yeah, so I think in this wave, so all of those online courses and tools are still there, but I want to go back to search again, and chatbots and LLMs. So I recall when I used to do research, right? I used to go to Google, search, go through the links, combine, go again, click back and forth, and then get the answer I need. Now I think doing research and upskilling yourself has become so easy with the large language models, right? With ChatGPT, with Gemini. Ask a question, go detailed. Now this is how I do research. I ask a question to the ChatGPT space. I can ask about any topic. I can go as much deep as I want. And guess what? If I want to go to the source, those tools give me the source as well. Hey, here's a link from where we compile and summarize the answer for you. So once again, upskilling has become very turbocharged. So someone who wants to do independent upskilling, they can use these language models tools and get a lot of information really fast without going back and forth with the blue links and the red links and so forth. So yes, so now I think we have this extra, and this is where there's a lot of discussion going on in the education space, right? Hey, are the master's degrees useful anymore? Are they? Because now you have these tools that people can just leverage to actually learn how to code, learn information about AI, go as deep as you want. So now we have these extra tools that can help us upskill
Mhm.
even faster. In
Mhm.
addition to what you mentioned, the courses
Yeah.
and stuff, that those are still there. If you want
Yeah.
to do that, yes, they're still there. But now we have these extra tools
Yeah.
to upskill ourselves
Mhm.
as fast as we want.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're basically saying that you were comparing the video-based education systems to the early days of search.
Mm.
And now what's going to happen is a lot more customization and interactivity
Mhm.
and personal learning paths using these Gen AI models that
Yes.
everybody can just learn at their own pace and at their own
Mhm.
kind of mode of learning.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And to just give you some example, like I used to
Yeah.
do research on some topics, right? For
Hmm.
example, if I actually want to find that the latest papers in the space of knowledge graphs.
Yeah.
So previously, it used to be okay. I should to type in a Google search. Google used to give me 15 links. I had to go to each of those links to get what I need, right? And
Yeah.
then compile the resources. Now I can ask that question to
Hmm.
either Google search itself or ChatGPT. It's going to give me a really great summary of here are the top 3 papers in the past 4 months.
Hmm.
Oh, great!
Wow.
Now I'm being spoon-fed information much faster. I
Yeah.
can ramp up myself, and so I think this is a great avenue to upskill and learn new things.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. And finally, Faizan, which is, you were talking about, again, staying with the second problem that you mentioned about talent and skilling, right? Uh, on one end, you have this demand going up like this, but the talent is not necessarily keeping up with this on the same curve.
Mhm.
But then you have this parallel technology of copilots and developer productivity and code generation LLMs coming up. Do you think that will play a significant role in, reducing that gap? Will the same developer be able to do a lot more? What role do you think that's going to play along with upskilling?
That's a great question, Binny. So basically,
Mm,
what you're highlighting is something
mm,
that has been there for a while.
mm,
This is something that we call the skills gap, right?
mm,
The skills gap is something like, okay, what's expected in your job or industry
mm,
versus what you're learning coming out of the school. So that's the gap where, okay, hey, we are training these engineers and scientists,
mm,
and they're and but if they go to the industry, they have to be reskilled again. So the
mm,
skills gap was always there.
mm,
I think over the both in software engineering and AI. So there have been a lot of work in this space on how to close the skills gap, right? Understanding what the industry actually needs, and then you actually mentioned these tools like GitHub Copilot and so forth
yeah,
that makes the engineers and scientists more productive. So
yeah,
yes, there's an element there right now that's happening in industry where yes, what are the skills or what are the tasks that can be automated, right?
mhm,
So there's some tasks that can be automated or made more efficient, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean that the person who's using that tool doesn't need to know what's going on.
mhm,
So the key part there is that whether you are a data scientist or an engineer, you
yeah,
still need to understand some aspects of both AI and software engineering, even if a tool is automating it for you.
right,
So that's where because if you don't, then we're going to lose that skill set. So just because you have a tool that can make you more efficient doesn't mean
mhm,
that you don't know what the tool is doing, right?
yeah,
So those are the two things that come into play.
mhm,
Making sure that we understand and we close the skills gap
yeah,
between learning in school and industry, and also understanding the tool, what the tool is automating for you, what it's helping for you, what it is helping you with, right? So
got it. That's very helpful, Faizan. This was very insightful. Thank you so much for taking time to do this. Really appreciate it. Lots
thank
of,
you.
yeah,
Yeah, I thank you, Binny. This was great. Thank you for all the questions and the great conversation.
appreciate it. Thanks, Faizan.